What's up? What's up? What's up? Alright. Okay. Howdy, guys. So, today, doing a lecture on Holographic Universe. We're going to talk about it and what that means. Simulation theory, all that stuff. How it could be possible that your brain creates and maintains this reality we live in without us even knowing it. And without our brains to interpret, this reality probably couldn't exist. It's our belief and our sheer will that things happen. All the thoughts in your head turn into frequency. It's a waveform, which is what everything is. And then that frequency is emitted out into your universe, okay? And that resonates with things of the same vibration. Everything's just vibration, frequency, right? Vibration, frequency. In this sense, like attracts like. And so that's where this whole, the secret, and you can manifest anything you think of and stuff. It's not, it's a literal, it is literal. You can create, manipulate reality. You are a reality. And that's where this whole concept of we are God because we are the creators down here. That spark in us, that divine little piece of us is from beginning, from source. And that is where we get our power to create. Now, we're going to talk about holographic universe because a lot of people can't understand that. You have to accept that subconsciously for it to work. Okay, you got to believe it. And that takes imagination. That is one of the main reasons that when you're a child in this society we grow up, they try to beat the imagination out of you. Okay, especially nowadays, how they over-sexualize shit, how they put just base, meaningless shit into kids' minds, the reality shows, all the bullshit that is attacking the imagination. They know exactly how to shut this shit down, and they know that is how you keep control. So, all the things they do, quote unquote Illuminati, the elite, whatever you want to call them, they do these things in hope of keeping you in fear and keeping you continuing what they want as reality, because your reality is, our subconscious mind is what is in control of that. Okay, the subconscious is what talks to the ether, the other side, the spirits, all that shit. So that is your subconscious mind. Your ego, what you need, it's not about destroying your ego. Your ego you need to survive down here. So, but you have to please it. So your ego is here to keep you safe. So it's what taught you when you were a kid, don't touch the stove, it's hot, it burns, ouch. That's your ego, so that'll keep you in constant. It's here to protect us. But it protects us from change. It gets used to things it's used to, and it sees those as comfortable, and that becomes a pattern, and then that becomes your life without you even realizing it. And it's not doing anything bad, it's trying to protect you. It thinks it's learned all these things, and it protects you. So the ego keeps shit out of the subconscious mind. That's what a schizophrenic is, and people, I think we'll talk about that today when I read. But a schizophrenic is somebody that just doesn't have the filter of the ego. So all of these messages, all these things from where we can't see, the astral realm, the other side, the ancestors, any of that stuff will flow in. If your ego ain't working right, it's going to flow in just whenever, okay? So that's why our ego is here to keep us from going crazy. So the trick is to learn how to please the ego, to allow it to let you create your new reality, to be accepted by the subconscious. The subconscious is what's connected to the divine, and that's what creates, that's what manifests. Your subconscious takes your thoughts, your vibrations, takes it back to the other. Shit goes up, comes back. Like, takes your subconscious mind, sends those things out. Those vibrations go up into the astral world, manifests in the astral world, and it trickles back down in the form of the material. That's how that shit works. So, anyways, we're gonna get started. We're gonna, oh fuck, I forgot to grab that. Be right back. Alright, sorry. Okay, let's do this. So, gonna put Mama Kate up here with us today. She's gonna guide us. We're gonna put her torches out. Let her guide us with her light. Alright, we're gonna do it right there. Cat. Keep the vibes right, son. Keep the vibes right. Got my organite. Got my crystals. We're good. Alright, so, anyways. So, subconscious mind takes those things out, brings it back. Manifests it in the material. Programming the subconscious, you need to learn to trick the ego. So you still need to feed your ego. You still need to give it things it likes. It likes to dress good. It likes to be happy. It likes to live in abundance. So when you create in your new reality that you're the master of, you have to teach your ego it's okay. So you're going to start thinking these positive things, manifest, live in that feeling of abundance. Don't think about money, don't think about things, because that's just, money is just a side effect of abundance. Abundance is an energy. Abundance is a feeling. You've felt it before. And everything's good when you're not feeling broke, when you feel like everything's flowing in. Job's going good. Family's healthy. Bills are paid. All good. So, start doing those things while you're creating this new existence, teaching your ego that you do get to create down here, that none of that's poppycock, that it's the real, which is the tricky part, because your ego, you're so used to teaching it, it's been programmed that magic can't be real, it's fairy tales. So that's that voice in your head when you start trying to do this shit. And that's why we learn about the simulation theory and the holographic theory, because when you learn these scientific things, that helps your ego to accept that this shit could be real. And I'm one of those dudes. That's why I had a hard time with it a lot earlier on, was because I like to see evidence. I like to see that, you know, in front of your face shit that you can see, you can touch, you can see the results, understand it. So, and that's quantum physics. That's why quantum physics is cool, because these are scientists who are proving that our brains affect all the molecules, atoms, waves, particles outside of ourselves. Cool. Anyways, alright, let's do a little ashe to the ancestors. Ashe to the gods that watch over us. Alright, we're gonna say, let's get that smoke going there. Oh man, there we go. Alright. Cat, there we go. Alright, so. Alright, Ashe Mama Hecate, Ashe Baphomet, Ashe Santa Muerte, Ashe Ma Kali, Ashe Eight Immortals, Ashe Bastet, Ashe Hanuman, Ashe Ganesha, Ashe Iktome, and Ashe Baba Legba. He's my main. So spirits and deities are just frequencies, energies, giving human traits, because you're trying to trick your subconscious, learn your subconscious, trick your ego. Giving it those human traits helps your unconscious, subconscious to understand it, helps you to internalize those energies. And once you start working with those energies, which are all, Ganesha is the energy of abundance, Baba Legba is an energy of the crossroads, the split of the fence. He's on this world and that world, so he helps you, brings you messages, helps you to understand things that are coming to you from the spirit realm. That's my main. That's the one that showed up to me first. So, Baba Legba. Thank you, Bubba. Anyway. Alright, so Bohm believes an electron is not one thing, but a totality or ensemble unfolded throughout the whole of space. When an instrument detects the presence of a single electron, it is simply because one aspect of the electron's ensemble has been unfolded. Go. Similar to the way an ink drop unfolds out of the glycerin at a particular location. When an electron appears to be moving, it is due to the continuous series of such unfoldments and enfoldments. Put another way, electrons or all other particles are no more substantive or permanent than a form of geyser water takes as it pushes out a fountain. They are sustained by a constant influx from the implicate order, the other side, the ether. And when a particle appears to be destroyed, it is not lost. It has merely unfolded back into the deeper order of which it sprang. A piece of holographic film and the image it generates are also an example of an implicate order and an explicit order. The film is an implicate order because the image encoded on its interference patterns is a hidden totality unfolded throughout the whole. The hologram projected from the film is an explicit order because it represents the unfolded and perceptible version of the image. The constant and flowing exchange between the two orders explains how particles such as an electron in the postronium atom can shapeshift from one kind of particle to another. Such shiftings can be viewed as one particle, say an electron, unfolding back into the implicate order, while another, a photon, unfolds and takes its place. It also explains how a quantum can manifest as either as a particle or a wave. According to Bohm, both aspects are always unfolded in a quantum's ensemble, but the way the observer interacts with the ensemble determines which aspect unfolds and which remains hidden. As such, the role of an observer plays in determining the form of a quantum may be more mysterious than the fact that the way a jeweler manipulates a gem determines which of its facets become visible and which do not. Because the term hologram usually refers to an image that is static and does not convey the dynamic and ever-active nature of an incalculable unfoldings and unfoldings, the moment-by-moment create our universe. Bohm prefers to describe the universe not as a hologram, but as a hollow movement. The existence of a deeper and holographically organized order also explains why reality becomes a non-local at the subatomic level. As we have seen, when something is organized holographically, all semblance of location breaks down, saying that every part of a piece of a holographic film contains all the information possessed by the whole is really just another way of saying that the information is distributed non-locally. Hence, if the universe is organized according to holographic principles, it too would be expected to have non-local properties. So chaos, that everything unfolds from chaos. Chaos is love, it's creation. That's chaos magic. Chaos. But everything unfolds from. You're the one that controls the unfolding. You just don't know how to control your mind to really harness the power that you could have. Okay, so, yeah. So, Despite the apparent separateness of things at the explicate level, everything is a seamless extension of everything else, and ultimately, even the implicate and the explicate orders blend into each other. Take a moment to consider this. Look at your hand. Now look at light streaming from the lamp beside you, and the dog resting at your feet. You are not merely made of the same things. You are the same thing. One thing. Unbroken. One enormous something that has extended its uncountable arms and appendages into all apparent objects, atoms, restless oceans, and twinkling stars in the cosmos. Bohm believes that our almost universal tendency to fragment the world and ignore the dynamic interconnectedness of all things is responsible for many of our problems, not only in science, but in our lives and our society as well. For instance, we believe we can extract the valuable parts of the earth without affecting the whole. We believe it is possible to treat parts of our body and not be concerned with the whole. We believe we can deal with various problems in our society, such as crime, poverty, drug addiction, without addressing the problems in our society as a whole, and so on. In his writing, Bohm argues passionately that our current way of fragmenting the world into parts not only doesn't work, but may lead to our extinction. So, yeah, get it, right? So you have an effect on everything, just by looking at it. We haven't even gotten to what your thoughts do yet. Just by looking, you create. You are God on this earth. Alright. Okay, so yeah, now they're just talking about the electrons. So the electrons, they separated them. They both spin because they're not separate. Everything connected, right? They work together. Okay, so mind, body, this is where we get into the cool shit. Alright. So, gonna talk about Jung, I know that. Alright, the holographic idea also sheds light on the unexplainable linkages that can sometimes occur between the consciousness of two or more individuals. One of the most famous examples of such linkage is the embodied in the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung concept of collective unconscious. Ashe Carl Jung. Early in his career, Jung became convinced that the dreams, artworks, fantasies, and hallucinations of his patients often contained symbols and ideas that could not be explained entirely as products of their personal history. Instead, such symbols are more closely resembled the images and themes of the world's great many mythologies and religions. Jung concluded that myths, dreams, hallucinations, and religious visions all spring from the same source, a collective unconscious that is shared by all people. Once experience that had led Jung to the conclusion took place in 1906 and involved the hallucination of a young man suffering from paranoid schizophrenia. One day while making his rounds, Jung found the young man standing at a window and staring up at the sun. The man also moving his head from side to side in a curious manner. When Jung asked him, "What are you doing?" he explained that he was looking at the sun's penis and that he moved his head from side to side. The sun's penis moved and caused the wind to blow. At the time, Jung viewed the man's assertion as a product of a hallucination, but several years later he came across a translation of a 2,000-year-old Persian religious text that changed his mind. The text consisted of a series of rituals and invocations designed to bring on visions. It described one of those visions and said that if the participant looked at the sun, he would see a tube hanging down from it, and when the tube moved from side to side, it would cause the wind to blow. Since circumstances made it extremely unlikely that the man had contact with the text containing the ritual, Jung concluded the man's vision was not simply a product of unconscious mind, but had bubbled from a deeper level, from the collective unconscious of the human race itself. Jung called such images archetypes and believed they were so ancient it is if each of us has the memory of a 2 million-year-old man lurking somewhere in the depths of our unconscious minds. Although Jung's concept of a collective unconscious has had an enormous impact on psychology and is now embraced by untold thousands of psychologists and psychiatrists, our current understanding of the universe provides no mechanism for explaining its existence. The interconnectedness of all things predicted by the holographic model, however, does offer an explanation. In a universe which all things are infinitely interconnected, all consciousnesses are also interconnected. We are all connected. We forgot. We just forgot. Stop using all of our heads. They used to know this shit back in the day. The ancients could talk. Mind to mind. Then you have to say shit. Guaranteed. Although Jung's connective unconscious had an enormous impact on psychology, is now embraced by untold thousands of psychologists and psychiatrists, our current understanding of the universe provides no mechanisms for explaining its existence. The interconnectedness of all things predicted by the holographic model, however, does not offer an explanation. In a universe which all things are infinitely interconnected, all consciousnesses also must be interconnected. Despite appearances, we are all beings without borders. Or, as Bohm puts it, deep down the consciousness of mankind is one, and each of us has access to the unconscious knowledge of the entire human race. Why aren't we all walking encyclopedias? Psychologist Robert Anderson Jr. of the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York, believes it is because we are only able to tap into the information in the implicate order that is directly relevant to our memories. Anderson calls this selective process personal resonance and likens it to the fact a vibrating tuning fork will only resonate with or set up a vibration in another tuning fork only if the second tuning fork is possess a similar structure, shape, and size. Due to the personal resonance, relatively few of the almost infinite varieties of images in the implicate holographic structure of the universe are available to an individual person's consciousness, says Anderson. Thus, when enlightened persons glimpsed that unity of consciousness centuries ago, they did not write out relativity theory because they were not studying physics in a context similar to the way in which Einstein studied physics. Alright, take a break. We'll get back to it. Okay, so Holographic Universe started out, so a simulation is what, not a simulation. The ancients called this an illusion. They called it the great waters, alright, because waves, everything's waves and particles, right? They understood that. They knew that we're the things that give form to the waves and the particles. Nothing has properties until we give it to it, okay? That's all done in your head. Your head's what interprets everything around you, okay? And the ancients called this place an illusion. The Maya. It was a dream. We're in a dream that you create. It's not the beginning. It is not the end. You've probably been here before. But you create it. Together, we subconsciously create it. So you can affect the little things in your life yourself. If all of us get on the same wavelength and start believing in the same way, I guarantee you we could change this world into most things we want to do. All that junk DNA, the 85% of our brains we don't use those. That's just been turned off, basically. Over the thousands of years, people got control, hid the secrets of the universe, locked them up in a library in the Vatican, raped and pillaged all the ancient tribes. That was to destroy history. That was to steal science. The Moors, the Egyptians, the Gnostics, all knew this stuff. And all your religions nowadays are all directly from the original, which was an ancient Kemet in Egypt. Which after they got kicked out of Egypt, they turned into the Gnostics. And that slowly turned into Christianity, Islam. Now, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. All from the same shit. And it's because that story is archetypal to you, which means your brain already knows it. That's why that story works with you, because it's secrets. Secret doctrine. hidden in it are symbols that you don't personally understand, but the subconscious mind understands. And that's what Carl Jung was all about, the archetypes. We all, innate from birth, see these symbols of the universe mean the same thing to us. It's archetypal. That's why they have dream books. Like if you dream about this, it could be about this. Those are archetypal symbols that are connected since the beginning of us. So connected to Creator. Okay. Cute. Alright, so brain as a hologram. I'm going to be reading out of Michael Talbot, Holographic Universe. Okay. So anyways, at Yale, Pribram continued to ponder the idea that memories were distributed throughout the brain, and the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became. After all, patients had portions of their brains removed for medical reasons, never suffered the loss of specific memories. Removal of a large section of the brain might cause a patient's memory to become generally hazy, but no one ever came out of surgery with any selective memory loss. Similarly, individuals who had received head injuries in car collisions and other accidents never forgot half of their family or half of a novel they had. Even removal of sections of the temporal lobes, the area of the brain that had figured so prominently in Penfield's research, didn't create any gaps in a person's memory. Pribram's thinking was further solidified by his own research's inability to duplicate Penfield's findings when stimulating brains other than those of epileptics. Even Penfield himself was unable to duplicate the result in non-epileptic patients. Despite the growing evidence that memories were distributed, Pribram was still at a loss to how the brain might accomplish such a seemingly magical fact. Then, in the mid-1960s, he read an article in the Scientific American describing the first construction of a hologram. It hit him like a thunderbolt. Not only was the concept of holography dazzling, but it provided a solution for the puzzle he had been wrestling with. Okay. Hologram is produced with a single laser light, split into two separate beams. The first beam is bounced off the object to be photographed, and the second beam is allowed to collide with the reflected light of the first. When this happens, they create an interference pattern, which is then recorded on a piece of film. Okay? So, holograph, the whole image is always in any little piece of that light. So you shine something on a screen, right? See the image on the screen. You know when there's dust and things blowing through the middle and you can see the light? That's the image, right? Going up to the screen. So basically they're saying any little piece of the holograph has the whole image in it. So if you took a little piece of that light, shined it on a piece of paper, one piece of it has the whole image in one piece of light. Okay? Same with our brains. We found all memories are not localized. We have this whole in our brain of everything we've seen in our lives. And that's why some people can recall everything and some people can recall nothing. Some people just know where to find it on the brain. They got stronger at that, whatever the heck that is. So, that means, and then they did another experiment, see where it came from, and they found that these ideas popping up in the head were already ideas before the brain gets the idea to have it. See what I'm saying? So it's originated somewhere else. Comes out of the ether. And that is the mass subconscious. That's why people can meditate and dream and pull down things. So the guy that made rocket fuel, L. Ron Hubbard, and Walt Disney, forgot the guy that made rocket fuel's name, but all of them were occultists. And they all said they channeled their ideas. Jack Parsons. So Jack Parsons, that created rocket fuel, said he had channeled that. He said he didn't create it. It came to him when he was meditating. Because it already exists. Everything already exists. It's a matter of us pulling it out of the ether. No ideas are yours. It's the mass subconscious. You just connect to it and get those ideas out of it. Okay. So, it was possible for every portion of a piece of holographic film to contain all the information necessary to create a whole image, and it seemed equally possible for every part of the brain to contain all the information necessary to recall a whole memory. Did the same thing with cats and rats, and they took out their, what was it? Visual cortex. Like 95% of their visual cortex, and they could still perform, and the optic nerves, and they could still perform seriously impairing its ability, without seriously impairing its ability to perform complex visual tasks. Piece of holographic, our ability to both recall and forget. A piece of holographic film containing multiple images, such as those described above, also provide a way of understanding our ability to both recall and forget. Okay. When such a piece of film is held in a laser beam and tilted back and forth, the various images it contains appear and disappear in a glittering stream. It has been suggested that our ability to remember is analogous to shining a laser beam on such a piece of film and calling up a particular image. Similarly, when we are unable to recall something, this may be equivalent to shining various beams on a piece of multiple image film, but failing to find the right angle to call up the image memory for which we are searching. So, let's read this part. At first glance, our ability to recognize familiar things may not seem so unusual, but brain researchers have long realized it is quite a complex ability. For example, the absolute certainty we feel when we spot a familiar face in a crowd of several hundred people is not just a subjective emotion, but appears to be caused by an extremely fast and reliable form of information processing in our brain. In a 1970 article in the British science magazine Nature, physicist Peter Van Heerden proposed what a type of holography known as recognition holography offers a way of understanding this ability. In recognition holography, a holographic image of an object is recorded in the usual manner, save the laser beam is bounced off a special kind of mirror known as a focusing mirror before it is allowed to strike the unexposed film. If a second object, similar but not identical to the first, is bathed in laser light and the light is bounced off the mirror and onto the film after it has been developed, a bright point of light will appear on the film. The brighter and sharper the point of light, the greater degree of similarity between the first and second objects. If the two objects are completely dissimilar, no point of light will appear. By placing a light-sensitive photocell behind the holographic film, one can actually use the setup as a mechanical recognition system. A similar technique known as interference holography may also explain how we can recognize both the familiar and unfamiliar features of an image, such as the face of someone we have not seen for many years. In this technique, an object is viewed from a piece of holographic film containing this image. When this is done, any feature of the object that has changed since its image was originally recorded will reflect light differently. An individual looking through the film is instantly aware of both how the object has changed and how it has remained the same. The technique is so sensitive that even the pressure of a finger on a block of granite shows up immediately, and the process has been found to have practical applications in the materialist testing industry. Alright, so to most of us, it's obvious that our feelings of love, hunger, anger, and so on are internal realities, and the sound of an orchestra playing, the heat of the sun, the smell of bread baking, and so on are external realities. But it is not so clear how our brains enable us to distinguish between the two. Parabin points out that when we look at a person, the image of the person is really on the surface of our retinas. Yet we do not perceive the person as being on our retinas. We perceive them as being in the world out there. Similarly, when we stub our toe, we experience the pain in our toe. But the pain is not really in our toe. It is actually a physiological process taking place somewhere in our brains. How then is our brain able to take the multitude of neurophysiological processes that manifest as our experience of all which we are internal and fool us into thinking that some are internal and some are located beyond the confines of our gray matter? Creating the illusion that things are located where they are is not the quintessential feature of a hologram. As mentioned, if you look at a hologram, it seems to have extension in space. But if you pass your hand through it, you will discover there is nothing there. Despite that your senses tell you, no instrument will pick up the presence of any abnormal energy or substance when the hologram appears to be hovering. This is because a hologram is a virtual image, and the image appears to be where it is not, and possesses no more extensions in space than does the three-dimensional image you see of yourself when you look in a mirror. Just as the image in the mirror is located in the slivering on the mirror's back surface, the actual location of a hologram is always in the photographic emulsion on the surface of the film recording it. Further evidence that our brain is able to fool us into thinking that inner processes are located outside the body comes the Nobel Prize-winning physiologist George Van Bexey. In a series of experiments conducted in the late 1960s, Bexey placed vibrators on the knees of blindfolded test subjects. Then, he varied the rates at which the instruments vibrated. By doing so, he discovered that he could make his test subjects experience the sensation that a point source of vibration was jumping from one knee to another. He found that he can even make his subjects feel the point source of vibration in the space between their knees. In short, he demonstrated that humans have the ability to seemingly experience sensations in spatial locations where they have absolutely no sense receptors. He believes that Bexey's work is compatible with the holographic view and sheds additional light on how interfering wave, or in Berkeley's case, interfering sources of physical vibration, enable the brain to localize some of its experiences beyond physical boundaries of the body. He feels this process may also explain the phantom limb, or the sensation experienced by some amputees that are missing arm or leg is still present. Such individuals often feel early realistic cramps, pains, and tinglings in phantom appendages. But maybe what they are experiencing is the holographic memory of the limb that is still recorded in the interference patterns of the brain. Alright, give me 1 second. So, right, it's not really happening. We created something. Through repetition, over and over and over again, you created these feelings, what you experience. Even when your arm's gone, you still fucking experience it because it's there. You created it. It may not seem the arm anymore, but your brain will still interpret it as there. All right. All right. Okay, so as far as Purebrim, by the 1970s, enough evidence had accumulated to convince him that his theory was correct. In addition, he had taken his ideas into the laboratory and discovered that a single neuron in the motor cortex respond selectively to limited bandwidth of frequencies, a finding that further supported his conclusion. So we can only see a certain amount of frequencies, right? It's the same thing with the entire world and everything. As above, so below. We can only see 5% of space, whatever's out there. Dark matter, right? That's the other 95%. We only use 5 to 15% of our brain. The rest is dark junk. Same thing with our DNA. And we only see 5% of the light spectrum, okay? And everything. So light is frequency, right? You only see 5% of what's going on around you. That means that's why you don't see all the ghosts. You don't see the world behind the world, because you are not operating at those levels of frequency that those higher light bands are. So, the question that began to bother him was if the picture of reality in our brains is not a picture at all, but a hologram, what is it a hologram of? The dilemma posed by his question is analogous to taking a Polaroid picture of a group of people sitting around a table, and after the picture develops, finding that instead of people, there are only blurry clouds of interference patterns positioned around the table. In both cases, one could rightfully ask, which is the true reality? The seeming objective world, the experience by the observer, photographer, or the blur of interference patterns recorded by the camera and brain? Because there's no such thing technically as a solid. Everything is just frequency. So everything is waves and particles vibrating at a certain frequency. You can only see 5% of that light band, so you can see, so that's all you see. But we're the ones putting it together in our brain, interpreting it, turning into whatever the fuck it is. Turning it into a solid, turning it into a water. This is all interpreted by our brain. So Jesus said, you will be able to do works greater than me. And that motherfucker walked on water and rose the dead, if he was real. So, Perelman realized that if the holographic brain model was taken to its logical conclusion, it opened the door on the possibility that its objective reality, the world of coffee cups, mountain vistas, elm trees, table lamps, might not even exist, or at least not exist in the way we believe it exists. Was it possible, he wondered, that what the mystics had been saying for centuries was true? Reality was Maya, an illusion, and what was out there was really a vast, resonating symphony of waveforms, a frequency domain that was transferred into the world as we know it only after it entered our senses. Realizing that the solution he was seeking might lie outside the province of his own field, he went to the physicist's son for advice. His son recommended he look into the work of a physicist named David Bohm. The cosmos is a hologram. Alright. One can't help but be astonished at the degree to which Bohm has been able to break out of the tight molds of scientific conditioning and stand alone with a completely new, literally vast idea, one which has both internal consistency and the logical power to explain why diverging phenomena of physical experiences may entirely unexpected point of view. It is a theory which is intuitively satisfying that many people have felt that if the universe is not the way Bohm describes it, it ought to be. John P. Biggs. Alright, so. This book was written late 80s, or maybe 91, I think it was late 80s. And the research they're talking about was back in the 60s and 70s. So this was before quantum physics. Now remember, nowadays in quantum physics, they can measure particles and different shit. And they found, like with the particle splitting experiment, they shoot particles through slits at a wall. All the particles go through at a certain pattern. Make certain patterns on the wall behind it when it goes through the slits. Now, they found out when people are watching, so when nobody was watching, they all went through, chunked, just landed in a spot. All these particles in a little. They fucking re-recorded it when people were watching, just observing with the eyes, with the mind. Then the particles spread out every fucking time. So, just by somebody watching, the particles behave differently. Those particles are not part of anybody's body. Just outside of oneself. and got affected just by visual, just looking, not even thoughts. You didn't even put thought into it yet. Thoughts what creates frequency. They can measure that. They measure the brain, have people think certain things. They've measured runners, had them lay down, run a whole marathon in their mind. Their fucking bodies activated in those ways. Their muscles moved like they were really running the race. It's all in your mind. It creates everything. Third eye, baby. Pineal gland. That's why it's under attack. Vaccinations. Fluoride in your water to calcify the pineal gland. You know what Hitler put in the water at the concentration camps? Fluoride, motherfucker. Fluoride. Woo! Anyways. Then they found out, this talks about how electrons, they found out, can manifest as particles or waves. So that's saying it's nothing until we give it fucking something. Okay? It's all just bleh. Until the human mind comes into contact with it. A tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Does it even happen when nobody's watching? Alright, let's get to some of the cooler stuff. Alright, so we gotta read a little bit of that. So the electron, like some shapeshifter out of folklore, can manifest as either a particle or a wave. The chameleon-like ability is common to all subatomic particles. It is also common to all things once thought to manifest exclusively as waves. Light, gamma rays, radio waves, X-rays, all can change from waves to particles and back again. Today's physicists believe that subatomic phenomenon showed not to be classified solely as either waves or particles, but a single category of some things that are always somehow both. These somethings are called quanta. The physicists believe they are the basic stuff from which the entire universe is made up of. Perhaps most astonishing of all is that there is compelling evidence that the only time quanta ever manifests as particles is when we are looking at them. For instance, when an electron is being looked at, experimental findings suggest that it is always a wave. Physicists are able to draw the conclusion because they have devised clever strategies for deducing how an electron behaves when it's not being observed. It should be noted that it is only one interpretation of the evidence and is not the conclusion of all physicists. As we will see, Bohm himself has a different interpretation. Once again, this seems more like magic than the kind of behavior we are accustomed to expect from the natural world. Image owning a bowling ball. Imagine owning Imagine owning a bowling ball that has only a bowling ball when you looked at it. You sprinkled talcum powder all over a bowling lane and rolled such a quantum bowling ball towards the pins it would trace a single line through the talcum powder while you were watching. But if you blinked while it was in transit, you would find that for 1 second or two you were not looking at the bowling ball, stopped tracing a line, and instead left a broad wavy stripe, like the undulating swath of a desert snake makes as it moves sideways over the sand. Once again, this seems more like magic than the kind of behavior we are accustomed to expect from the natural world. Oh, such a situation is comparable to the one quantum physicists encountered when they first uncovered evidence that the quanta coalesce into particles only when they're being observed. Physicist Nick Herbert, a supporter of the interpretation, says this has sometimes caused him to imagine that behind his back the world is always radically ambiguous and ceaselessly flowing quantum soup. But whenever he turns around and tries to see the soup, he glances instantly, it freezes it, and it turns back into ordinary reality. He believed this makes us all a little like Midas, the legendary king who never knew the feel of silk or the caress of a human hand because everything he touched turned to gold. Likewise, humans can never experience the true texture of quantum reality, Herbert says, because everything we touch turns to matter. Later. So, right? Shit only happens when we're fucking looking at it. Bohr was correct And okay, so Einstein, blah blah blah. So Einstein, so once asked. So we all know who Tesla is, right? So Tesla new frequency, new vibration. He was trying to give the world free energy source. He learned with the Tesla currents. He learned how to resonate with the frequency of the earth to pull the kinetic energy out of it, I think. And that's in those balls he made with them. He was just pulling that out of the earth. There was nothing it had to be plugged into or powered. So guess what? It was the same time Edison and Stick McGee, what's his name? I think fucking Rothschild. Rockefeller. Putting up all the power lines, and he was about ready to charge these motherfuckers for this shit. So Tesla got shut down by the government. Go research that. That's a fucking mindfuck. So anyways, Tesla was going to give us free energy. They couldn't have that. They have to charge for energy, food, all living. That's part of the slavery system. Read Bill Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse. He talks about all that shit at the beginning. And that motherfucker wrote that in like 82. And everything he said's come true. So, and they killed him. Anyways, Tesla, they shut him down. They sequestered all his shit, took away, fucking called him a loony. I'm pretty sure they locked him up somewhere. Locked him up in a loony bin or something. But anyways, so somebody once asked Einstein, how did it feel to be the smartest man on the planet? And you know what Einstein said? He said, I don't know. You need to ask Nikola Tesla. Einstein quoted as saying Nikola Tesla was the smartest man on earth. Anyways, Einstein didn't like this whole idea. Had something to do with the speed of light. Couldn't work. So anyways, Einstein and his colleagues published a famous paper entitled Can Quantum Mechanical Description of Physical Reality Be Considered Complete? And they explained why the existence of such twin particles proved that Bohr could not possibly be correct. As they pointed out, two such particles, say the photons emitted when postronomium decays, could be produced and allowed to travel a significant distance apart. Then they could be intercepted and their angles of polarization measured if the polarizations are measured at precisely the same moment and are found to be identical as quantum physics predicts. And if Bohr was correct and properties such as polarization do not coalesce into existence until they are observed or measured, this suggests that somehow the two photons must be instantaneously communicating with each other so they know the angle polarization to agree upon. The problem is, according to Einstein's special theory of relativity, nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, let alone travel instantaneously, for that would be tantamount to breaking the time barrier and would open the door to all kinds of unacceptable paradoxes. Einstein and his colleagues were convinced that no reasonable definition of reality would permit such faster-than-light interconnections to exist, and therefore Bohr had to be wrong. Now, the thing is, everything's connected. Ancient said that, too. So, it's not even traveling. It's in itself. It's just talking to itself. It doesn't have to fucking connect. Einstein's colleagues were convinced that no reasonable definition could exist, and therefore Bohr had to be wrong. Their argument is known as the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox, or EPR paradox for short. Bohr remained unperturbed by Einstein's argument. Rather than believing that some kind of faster-than-light communication was taking place, he offered another explanation. If subatomic particles do not exist until they're observed, then one could no longer think of them as independent things. Thus, Einstein was basing his argument on an error when he viewed twin particles as separate. They were part of an indivisible system, and it was meaningless to think of them otherwise. In time, most physicists sided with Bohr and became content that his interpretation was correct. One factor that contributed to Bohr's triumph was the quantum physicist had proved so spectacularly successful in predicting phenomena Few physicists were willing to even consider the possibility that it might be faulty in some way. In addition, when Einstein and his colleagues first made their proposal about twin particles, technical and other reasons prevented them such an experiment from actually being performed. This made it even easier to put out of the mind. This was curious, for although Bohr had designed the argument to consider Einstein's attack on quantum theory, as we will see, Bohr's view that the subatomic system are indivisible has equally profound implications for nature of reality. Ironically, these implications were also ignored, and once again, the potential importance of the interconnectedness was swept under the carpet. Now, I think they probably fucking knew. That's one of the main control factors anymore, is the divisiveness, man. So they build up these two sides. They did it past 4 years. We watched it. It was the best fucking example. So they give you one side, and they give you another side. They know the psychology of human beings, and they know it even better now because they control it. Through the Hollywood, through the news, through education, they control the status quo. That's why you don't want to be a sheeple, because they know what you're fucking doing, because they're the ones making you do it without even doing it. It's mind control, and all it takes is the manipulation of your subconscious. The subconscious is programmed by 3 things: fear, repetition, symbols. Okay? So, they use those. They are masters of those. Especially since, they were doing it already, but after World War II, when they brought the Nazi scientists back over here during Operation Paperclip, that is when fucking they got, because not Goebbels was the propaganda guy. He was a big part of it too, but no, who was the science, was it Kevorkian, I think? No. Anyways, whatever scientist, he had been torturing people. They've learned to fucking control the human mind. That's how they make assassins. That's how they make sex slaves. They fucking traumatize from early age. You traumatize through sexual abuse, through torture. When you traumatize, your brain splits honeycombs, and they can create different personalities in each of these new sections. That's what the alter is. That's what these people that have alters is. That's why they can have full personalities for each fucking alter, different memories, and not even remember any of the old ones completely. Their physiology will change. Watch that movie Split. It was Split and Mr. Glass, fucking good movies, and those were all about the same shit. That shit is real. And you know how when you turn into the badass, you got all buff and shit? They've done studies on that shit too. The physiology of the human body changes with the personalities. Blood pressure, all that shit is different for each of the different people they've created. So, anyways, why did I get off on that? Yeah, Split. So anyways, their biggest tool is divisiveness. They keep two separate fighting against each other, so nobody's ever looking at the top. Right now we got the liberals fighting against the crazy fucking nationalists, but if everybody just shut the fuck up, besides the few dumbass people we know about, the racists, besides the obvious, but which you shouldn't care about, they're not going to change, and it's a very small fucking percentage of the world. Okay, that's actually fucking racist. Most people feel the love now. We're coming together. We're becoming one family. It's happening, whether they like it or not, and that's why they're going so hard right now. But that separation is all they need to control, because if we just fucking snapped the fuck out of it, got together, and realized we all pretty much want the same thing, besides, like I said, the few dumbasses, we all want the same thing. The fucking weight of the billionaires creating fucking worlds for us to live in. We all want peace. We want no more war. We don't want to be fucking terrorizing other countries. We want education for our kids. The wage gap's got to be fixed. The ghettos are fucked up. These people are stuffed into these things, and they are prisons. Like, there is no way to get out. Barely any way to get out. So, the whole system is genius. None of it's by accident. This is all very meticulously planned. This is a chess game. That's why shit like this whole GameStop thing happening right now, why they're freaking out trying to shut it down, because they don't. That's the chaos factor. That's what we are, the thing they'll never be able to account for. And the more and more we come together, the more and more we create this whole reality, and less control they have over it. But the GameStop thing, the stock market, they have that shit on lock, right? Like always, locked down. And that is because they use it. They use it to manipulate the world and create the reality they want. So when these people decide to turn the script, fuck them the same way they control the stock market, that's why they're freaking out. That's why Biden presidency said, we'll keep an eye on the situation. Hopefully they don't do anything. But they might step in. We'll see what's going to happen with all that. But they have to be in control of those things because they have a certain reality, and this is a chess game. Every piece. Meticulously planned. So anyways, the Einstein thing, they've done tests nowadays. I don't know if they talk about it in the book, but now they've done it. They've separated two electrons from each other, taken them great distances apart, spin one, the other one, automatically. Because there's connection. There's no separation. These things unfold from the quantum realm. Unfold from the quantum realm when we observe them. They create matter. But it's still connected. There's still like a cord going back to that big goop, the soup, the quantum soup that everything forms out of from your mind. Okay, so anyways. Alright, so Bohm tried to find a workable alternative to Bohr's interpretation. He also assumed that there was a deeper reality beneath Bohr's inviolable wall, a subatomic level that still awaited discovery by science. Building on these premises, he discovered that simply by proposing the existence of a new kind of field on this subatomic level, he was able to explain the finding of quantum physics as well as Bohr could. Bohm called his proposed new field the quantum potential and theorized that, like gravity, it pervaded all space and time. In his book, he argued that the way science viewed causality was also much too limited. Most effects were thought of as having only one or several causes. However, Bohm felt that an effect could have an infinite number of causes. For example, if you asked someone what caused Abraham Lincoln's death, they might answer that it was because of the bullet in John Wilkes Booth's gun, but a complete list of all the causes that contribute to Lincoln's death would have to include all of the events that led to the development of the gun, all the factors that caused Booth to want to kill Lincoln, all the steps in the evolution of the human race that allowed for the development of a hand capable of holding a gun, and so on and so on. Bohm conceded that most of the time one could ignore the vast cascade of causes that had led to any given effect, but he still felt it was important for scientists to remember that no single cause and effect relationship was ever really separate from the universe as a whole. Each cause has its effect. You create frequency with your thoughts. You control this with this. Every thought you have goes out and does have an effect. It does affect your life. Every word you speak. The word is what creation is. Everything's vibration, so everything's sound. It's in the Bible, in all the books, they say the word. What was the first thing that existed was the word. He spoke and it was. Alright, take a break. Alright, so now we've got, the basic of where the holographic theory started, where it came from, and they started comparing it to what the ancients said. Everything's an illusion, we control reality. This is ours, right? Yeah, and we got to mass subconscious and all that. So, okay, so now we're going into the dream shit. So dreams are a big part. That's how your subconscious mind talks to you. So your dreams, if you ask the universe questions. It's going to give you your answers through your dreams, because your subconscious is going to communicate from the universe to you. Okay, so today the ESP dream studies conducted at Maimonides stand as some of the best empirical evidence that in our dreams at least we are able to communicate with one another in ways that cannot presently be explained. In a typical experiment, a paid volunteer who claimed to possess no psychic ability was asked to sleep in a room in a lab while a person in another room concentrated on a randomly selected painting and tried to get to the volunteer to dream of the image in it. Sometimes the results were inconclusive, but other times the volunteers had dreams that were clearly influenced by the paintings. For example, when the largest painting was Tomeo's Animals, a picture depicting two dogs flashing their teeth and howling over a pile of bones, the test subject dreamed she was at a banquet where there was not enough meat and everyone was warily eyeing one another as they greedily ate their allotted portions. In another, the target picture was Chagall's Paris from a window, a brightly colored painting depicting a man looking out a window at the Paris sky. The paintings also contained several other unusual features, including a small cat with a human face, several small figures of men flying through the air, and a chair covered with flowers. Over the course of several nights, the test subject dreamed repeatedly about things French architecture, a French policeman's hat, and a man in French attire gazing at various layers of a French village. Some of the images in those dreams are also appeared to be specific references to the painting's vibrant colors and unusual features, such as the image of a group of bees flying around flowers and brightly colored Mardi Gras type celebration in which people were wearing costumes and masks. Okay, so these people are allowed to are able to transfer their thoughts to other people, but it happens when they're sleeping, because when you're sleeping, you go into the alpha state and you're just using your subconscious mind. So when you're just using that, then you can communicate telepathically through waves. Okay, over in the other room, person's looking at these paintings, staring at them, looking what's in them, visualizing with their imagination, sending that, and then these other people are picking up on it. Okay? That's crazy, right? But everything's connected, so it's not. There's behind us the quantum realm, everything. It's the quantum soup. Okay. Ullman believes such findings are evidence that underlying state of interconnectedness Bohm is talking about. He feels that an even more profound example of holographic wholeness can be found in another aspect of dreaming. This is ability of our dreaming selves often to be far wiser than we ourselves are in our waking state. For instance, Ullman says that in psychoanalytical practice, he could have a patient who seemed completely unenlightened when he was awake. Mean, selfish, arrogant, exploitive, and manipulative, a person who had fragmented and dehumanized all of his interpersonal relationships. But no matter how spiritually blind a person may be or unwilling to recognize his or her own shortcomings, dreams invariably depict their failings honestly and contain metaphors that seem to be designed to prod him or gently into a state of greater self-awareness. It's God. That's how it makes you a better person, right? So he's guiding you towards these things. It's your subconscious mind. It's telling you what's wrong. It's telling you what to fix. You have all these problems you see in your constant day. All you need ask is yourself. But then you got to be able to interpret what yourself tells you. And it doesn't just happen in dreams. It'll happen in the waking world too. It's what we call synchronicities. Certain numbers. You'll be thinking about something, it'll pop on the TV, stuff like that. And that's where I first had my first real crazy awakening when I first started getting into this stuff. That's how the deity, Baba Legba, actually appeared to me, was through these synchronicities. And it was unmistakable. Unmistakable. I can't even go through the whole thing right now, but my old lady watched it. She's seen it too, and she can back me up on that crazy stuff that was happening. And that's the first one that got called to me. And that was after the guy I learned from, that I've been studying from, was telling me about how these things will appear in your life. This God came to me as a person, and I talked to him. But I knew it was him, because Baba Legba is depicted as an old black man with a crutch always. He smokes tobacco quite often. It's part of his energy. It's part of his frequency. I was rafting down a river in Sacramento out in the middle of nowhere. I was with a ton of other people, lots of people around me out in the middle of nowhere. Was this one-legged homeless man sitting on the bank smoking a cigarette staring just at me. And this was before I had already had some other weird shit happen, and then his animal showed up in my backyard. This animal's a rat. Now, I know rats aren't uncommon, but they've been in my house now for 3 years. I've never seen one up until that point, and I have not seen one since that point. So I know. So that's how these energies will come to you, and they'll give you guidance. They'll help you with this shit. You gotta give them offerings. All these energies, so you are in the whole, right? So all these energies exist. Everything exists within your subconscious mind. Everything, including these energies. Talked about how these deities resonate certain energies that you want to get connected with. But you're not really connecting. You're reactivating what's asleep in you. Everything, the cosmos exists with your brain. The way your brain works, the way your body physiology works, you mirror the workings of the cosmos. As above, so below. Go back, there's the Dogon tribe. The anthropologists went and studied them in the 70s. They were like one of the oldest untouched, had their original mythology still being passed down. They were untouched by white civilization, European civilization. Which, if you get into that, came around a lot later. There's a lot of evidence shows that the melanated people of this earth have been around longer than the white people of this earth. And that's a whole different subject. But anyways, the Dogon, they've been untouched. In the 70s, these anthropologists went to study them, learned their cosmology. They had pretty much similar as a lot of other tribes and stuff. It was an egg, cosmic egg, started everything. That's where life came from. And anyways, they had mythology where they came from, and that was the same as a lot of people too. They thought they came from the Sirius star system, Orion's belt, that area. But they explained to these anthropologists how the system, that planetary system, or that particular part of the cosmos or astral plane, I like to think, they knew the exact movements of the stars around the planets and the moons around the planets, the rotations, exactly what it did. Now, these people, the anthropologists, didn't think anything of it at the time. We didn't have the power to see that far. We didn't have the power of telescopes yet to see that far. So the guys wrote this book. It's called The Pale Fox. It's very good. And they found out after they had written this book, once we got telescopes that we could see with, and this is where they say, oh, aliens came down into, I don't believe that bullshit. I believe we were smarter than we are led to believe, and there's certain sciences that can lead you to know things about out there because they mirror everything down here. Anyways, we got powerful enough telescopes to see what was going up on there. The Dogon were 100% on track. They knew exactly what was going on up there. Stuff we couldn't see until we got super powerful telescopes. So, how they did that is because they knew, as above, so below. The workings of down here are mirrored to the workings of up there. This is a copy. We live in what's called the upside down world. It's a copy of the real world, folded upon itself 3 times. So we're a copy of a copy of a copy. That's how they knew what was going on up there. As above, so below. It's all connected. It's all connected. There is no division between any of this. Okay. So anyways, yeah, you can ask yourself for help. Ask yourself for help. Talk to your higher self. That's what's going to guide you through your hero's journey to where wherever you need to be. And if you have zero fucking clue, then that's what you need to ask. I need guidance. I need to know what my hero's journey is. What is my mission here? And it will never lead you wrong. It'll take you exactly where you need to be. It's not always awesome, but if you use it right, at least it'll be in abundance. I live in abundance and nothing but it. I will never have to want for anything ever again, which makes living down here a lot easier, and that's what pleases the ego. If your ego sees that you're doing good with your new routine and it's bringing it happiness, it'll allow it to continue and grow. Just talk to your higher self. Talk to the ancestors, talk to the spirits, ask which ones are here to guide you, which ones you should be working with. It will come. And then you got to learn how to do your altars and how to give offerings. You're giving offerings to those energies in yourself. They exist within your subconscious mind. So by you offering physically candy, tobacco, these things, certain energies like different things too, because certain energies resonate with different stuff. That's where you get a book of deities and encyclopedia, and it'll tell you everything for everyone. And all their mythology is just mirroring something in you. It's mirroring the story in you. The archetypal story that does not change. It's specific to every different person, but it never changes. Okay, so because a man can ignore the console of his dreams and still live to be 100, Ullman believes this self-monitoring process is striving for more than just the welfare of the individual. He believes that nature is concerned with the survival of the species. He also agrees with Bohm on the importance of wholeness and feels that dreams are nature's way of trying to counteract our seemingly unending compulsion to fragment the world. An individual can disconnect from all that's cooperative, meaningful, and loving and still survive, but nations don't have that luxury. Unless we learn to overcome all the ways we've fragmented the human race nationally, religiously, economically, or what we are going to continue to find ourselves in the position where it can accidentally destroy the whole picture. The only way we can do that is to look how fragmented our existence as individuals. Dreams reflect our individual experience, but I think that's because there's a greater underlying need to preserve the species, to maintain species connectedness. What is the source of the unending flow of wisdom that bubbles up in our dreams? Ullman admits that he doesn't know, but he offers a suggestion. Given the implicate order represents, in a sense, in the infinite information source, perhaps it's the origin of this greater fund of knowledge. Perhaps dreams are a bridge between the perpetual and non-manifest orders and represent a natural transformation of the implicate into the explicate. If Ullman is correct in supposition, it stands that the traditional psychoanalytical view of dreams on its ear, for instead of dream content being something that ascends into consciousness from a primitive substratum of the personality, quite the opposite would be true. Not coming from this, it's coming from the mass subconscious. Ullman believes that some aspects of psychosis can also be explained by the holographic idea. Okay, now we're going to talk about schizophrenic and stuff like that. They don't have that filter. Their ego's not there to block out this shit. Everything gets in, but it's not crazy. They're not hearing random stuff. They're talking to something. Something going on there. We just can't understand it because we have that thing that helps block that shit out. At least most of it. Ullman believes that psychosis. Both Bohm and Perman have noted that the experience mystics have reported throughout the ages, such as feeling of cosmic oneness with the universe, a sense of unity with all life, and so forth, sound very much like descriptions of the implicate order. They suggest that perhaps mystics are somehow able to peer beyond ordinary explicate reality and glimpse its deeper, more holographic qualities. Ullman believes that psychotics are also able to experience certain aspects of the holographic level of reality, but because they are unable to order the experiences rationally, glimpses are only tragic parodies of ones reported But because they are unable to order the experiences rationally, these glimpses are only tragic parodies of ones reported by mystics. For example, schizophrenics often report oceanic feelings of oneness with the universe, but in a magic, delusional way. They describe feeling a loss of boundaries between themselves and others, a belief that leads them to think their thoughts are no longer private. They believe they are able to read the thoughts of others, and instead of viewing people, objects, and concepts as individual things, they often view them as members of a larger and larger subclasses, a tendency that seems to be a way of expressing the holographic quality of the reality in which they find themselves. Ullman believes that schizophrenics try to convey the sense of unbroken wholeness in a way that views space and time. Studies have shown that schizophrenics often treat and converse of any relation as identical to the relation. For instance, according to the schizophrenic's way of thinking, saying that event A follows event B is the same as saying event B follows event A. The idea of one event following another in any kind of time sequence is meaningless, for all points in time are viewed equal. The same is true of spatial relations. If a man's head is above his shoulders, then his shoulders are also above his head. Like in the image in a piece of holographic film, things no longer have precise locations, and spatial relationships seem to have meaning. Everything's getting through. They see the connection. This shit is not, they're not just imagining these things. This is happening. This is how we explain those things. All one. Ego filters it out for you. Subconscious mind brings it in. Ego keeps you safe, filters it out. Make sure you don't go crazy, because it knows crazy is bad. Don't survive good here if you're going crazy. It's not good for the body. The ego is here to protect you. Ullman believes that certain aspects of holographic thinking are even more pronounced in manic depressives, where the schizophrenic only gets whiffs of the holographic order. The manic is deeply involved in it and grandiosely identifies with its infinite potential. He can't keep up with all the thoughts and the ideas that come at him such an overwhelming way. He has to lie, dissemble, manipulate those about him so as to accommodate to his expansive vista. The end result, of course, is mostly chaos and confusion mixed with occasional outbursts of creativity and success in consensual reality. In turn, the manic becomes depressed after he returns from his surreal vacation and once again faces the hazards and chance occurrences of everyday life. If it's true that we all encounter aspects of the implicate order when we dream, why don't these encounters have the same effect on us as they do psychotics? One reason is that we leave the unique and challenging logic of a dream behind when we wake. Because of his condition, the psychotic is forced to contend with it while simultaneously trying to function in everyday reality. Ullman theorizes that when we dream, most of us have a natural protective mechanism that keeps us from coming into contact with more of the implicate order than we can cope with. Dreams, lucid dreams. At the end 19 meeting of the Association of Study Dreams held in Washington, 1987, physicist Fred Alan Wolf delivered a talk in which he asserted that the holographic model may help explain the unusual phenomenon. They're talking about lucid dreaming. Wolf, an occasional lucid dreamer himself, points out that a piece of holographic film actually generates two images, a virtual image that appears to be in the space behind the film and a real image that comes into focus in the space in front of the film. One difference between the two is that the light waves that compose a virtual image seem to be diverging from an apparent focus or source. As we have seen, this is an illusion, for the virtual image of a hologram has no more extension in space than does the image in a mirror. But the real image of a hologram is formed by light waves that are coming to a focus, and this is not an illusion. The real image does possess extension in space. Unfortunately, little attention is paid to this real image in the usual applications of holography, because an image that comes into focus in empty air is invisible and can only be seen when dust particles pass through it or when someone blows a puff of smoke through it. Wolf believes that all dreams are internal holograms and ordinary dreams are less vivid because they are virtual images. However, he thinks the brain also has the ability to generate real images. That is exactly what it does when we are dreaming lucidly. The unusual vibrancy of the lucid dream is due to the fact that the waves are converging and not diverging. If there is a viewer where these waves focus, the viewer will be bathed in the scene, and the scene coming to a focus will contain him. In this way, the dream experience will appear lucid. He believes these processes are also what allows the lucid dreamer to create subjective realities in which things marble, floors, and flowers are tangible and real as their so-called objective counterpart. In fact, he thinks our ability to be lucid in a dream suggests that there may not be much difference between the world at large and the world inside of our heads. When the observer and the observed can separate and say this is the observed and this is the observer, which is an effect one seems to be having when lucid, then I think it's questionable whether lucid dreams should be considered subjective, says Wolf. Wolf postulates that dreams, and perhaps all dreams, are actually visits to parallel universes. They are just smaller holograms within the larger and more inclusive cosmic hologram. You even suggest that the ability to lucid dream might have better be called parallel universe awareness. I call it parallel universe awareness because I believe that parallel universes arise as other images in the hologram. Wolf states, this and other similar ideas about the ultimate nature of dreaming will be explored in greater depth in this book. And LSD. All right. So, I'm gonna go over two more things, and then we're gonna break. I'll call this part 1, and we will continue at a later date. But I hope this is just getting into everybody's head that this is how you start to see the world as the illusion. You gotta see it in your mind. Because even if you believe you're making shit happen, if in your mind your ego still thinks that this is a world of material things that we were taught that we don't have effect on, that is just completely random and evolution, you could still manifest, but it's not going to be as great because you're not working in that ultimate knowing. When you know it's all connected and that you have an intricate part of how it plays out, not just by your actions, but your thoughts, that's when you really start to make waves of your own, dude. Make those waves, they're going to go up, they're going to come back. They're going to go out, they're going to come back, baby. All right. Okay, so here's what Holographic Universe, when they did tests on LSD. Okay, so when Groff began his research, most scientists viewed LSD experience as little more than a stress reaction, the brain's way of responding to a noxious chemical. But when Groff studied the records of his patient's experience, he did not find evidence of any recurring stress reaction. Instead, there was a definite continuity running through each of his patient's sessions rather than being unrelated and random. The experiential content seemed to represent a successive unfolding of deeper and deeper levels of the unconscious. So when we take LSD or mushrooms or any of those things, the DMT, right? First of all, it makes your brain vibrate on a different frequency, so you start seeing light bands that you wouldn't normally see. So you see things you wouldn't really usually see, and then on top of that, you're also you're going to be able to, you'll start seeing those things that come in dreams in your, because you're allowing that subconscious to come through more. The results were striking. It quickly became clear that serial LSD sessions were able to expedite the psychotherapeutic process to shorten the time necessary for the treatment of many disorders. Traumatic memories that had haunted individuals for years were unearthed and dealt with, and sometimes even serious conditions such as schizophrenia were cured. But what was even most startling was that many of the patients rapidly moved beyond issues involving their illnesses and into areas that were uncharted by Western psychology. One common experience was reliving of what it was like to be in the womb. At first, Groff thought that these were imagined experiences, but as the evidence continued to amass, he realized that knowledge of embryology inherent in the descriptions was often far superior to the patient's previous education in the area. That memory of you being in that womb, it's in there somewhere. It's all just shining the light on it. Every experience you ever had is dormant in your brain still. You don't forget this shit. Synapses weaken over time and shit starts firing shorter and pot and stuff like that. That is really why you forget the shit. Take LSD though, focus on it, you might remember it again. So, patients accurately describe certain characteristics of the heart sounds of their mother, the nature of acoustic phenomenon in peritoneal cavity, specific details concerning blood circulation in the placenta, and even details about various cellular and biochemical processes taking place. They also described important thoughts, feelings their mother had during pregnancy and events such as a physical trauma she had experienced, because you're in there with her, you're fucking experiencing it too. The thing your mother experiences goes into your psyche still. You can be fucked before you even leave the womb. Depends how much. Mama's the first mind controller of everybody. Who tells you first. It's not a bad thing, but who's the first one to tell you to be afraid of things and tell you what to do and not to do? It's your mom. Mother was the first one to put you under mind control ever. What she was going through when you were in that womb, you were going through. Wolf believes our mind creates the illusion of reality out there through some kind of process studied by Bekasi. He believes that these processes are also what allows the lucid dreamer to create subjective realities in which things like wrong one, sorry guys. Alright, psychiatrists, psychologists, and biologists who experience pre-birth memories during their training for the program, all the therapists who participated in the study also had to go under several sessions of LSD psychotherapy, expressed similar astonishment at the apparent authenticity of their experiences. Most disconcerting of all were those experiences in which the patient's consciousness appeared to expand beyond the usual boundaries of the ego and explore what it was like to be other living things, even other objects. One female patient suddenly became convinced she had assumed the identity of a female prehistoric reptile. She not only gave a richly detailed description of what it felt like to be encapsulated in such a form, but noted that the portion of the male of the species' anatomy she found most sexually arousing was a patch of colored scales on the side of his head. The woman had no prior knowledge of such thing. A conversation Grove had with a zoologist later confirmed that in certain species of reptiles, colored areas in the head do indeed play an important role as triggers of sexual arousal. Patients were also able to tap into consciousness of their relatives and ancestors. One woman experienced what it was like to be her mother at the age of 3 and accurately described a frightening event that had befallen her mother at the time. The woman also gave a precise description of the house her mother had lived in, as well as the white pinafore she had been wearing. All details her mother later confirmed and admitted she had never talked about before. Other patients gave equally accurate descriptions of events that had befallen ancestors who had lived decades and even centuries before. Then you're getting into your ancestral baggage. So everything that's been experienced through your bloodline is still very much alive in your DNA. And that's the whole thing of destroying ancestral curses. You're here to do the work. You're here to kill the shadows, man. Get rid of that shadow self. Go time. Other experience included the accessing of racial and collective memory. Individuals of Slavic origin experienced what it was like to participate in the conquest of Genghis Khan Mongolian hordes, to dance in trance with Kalahari Bushmen, to undergo the initiation rites of the Australian Aborigines, and to die as sacrificial victims of the Aztecs. And again, the descriptions frequently contained obscure historical facts and a degree of knowledge that was often completely at odds with the patient's education, race, and previous exposure to the subject. For instance, one educated patient gave a richly detailed account of the techniques involved in the Egyptian practice of embalming and mummification, including the form and meaning of various amulets and sepulchral boxes. A list of the material used in the fixing of the mummy cloth, the size and shape of mummy bandages, and other esoteric facets of Egyptian funeral services. Other individuals tapped into the cultures of Far East not only gave impression descriptions of what it was like to have a Chinese, Japanese, or Tibetan psyche, but also related various Taoist or Buddhist teachings. There did not seem to be any limit of what Groff's LSD subjects could not tap into. They seemed capable of knowing what it was like to be every animal, even plant, on the tree of evolution. They could experience what it was like to be a blood cell, an atom, a thermonuclear process inside the sun, the consciousness of the entire planet, and even the consciousness of the entire cosmos. More than that, they displayed the ability to transcend space and time. Occasionally, they related uncannily accurate precognitive information. All one. Time is irrelative. That's what the schizophrenics, they don't understand before or after. It's all just happening. Everything just is connected and just is. In even stranger vein, they sometimes encountered non-human intelligences during their cerebral travels, discarnate beings, spirit guides from higher planes of consciousness, and the superhuman entities. On occasion, subjects also traveled to what appeared to be other universes and other levels of reality. It's almost as if LSD provided the human consciousness with access to a kind of infinite subway system, a labyrinth of tunnels and byways that existed in the subterranean reaches of the unconscious, and one that literally connected everything in the universe with everything else. After personally guiding over 3,000 LSD sessions, each one lasting 5 hours, and studying the records of more than 2,000 sessions conducted by colleagues, Groff unalterably convinced that something extraordinary was going on. After years of conceptual struggle and confusion, I have concluded that the data from LSD research indicate an urgent need for a drastic revision of the existing paradigms of psychology, psychiatry, medicine, and possibly science in general. There is present little doubt in my mind that our current understandings of the universe, of nature, reality, and particularly of human beings is superficial, incorrect, and incomplete. And even scientists today and stuff, they can't accept this because they have to live by these laws they've given themselves. That fucking Einstein's given. This is why they can't get past it. They can't get into real shit because they refuse to acknowledge these things happening. Because they can't be explained by equations. Not everything can. Chaos is what we come from. A human cannot understand what we come from. Our human consciousness will never understand where we come from. It's an energy we'll return to and know eventually, but right now is chaos. And a scientist, quote unquote, cannot accept fucking chaos. Even though there's plenty of research and studies to prove it. Groff believes in the holographic model as he points out the essential characteristics of transpersonal experiences, that feeling that all boundaries are illusionary, the lack of distinction between part and whole, and the interconnectedness of all things are all qualities one would expect to find in a holographic universe. In addition, he feels the enfolded nature of space and time in holographic domain explains why transpersonal experiences are not bound by the usual spatial or temporal limits. A single image experienced during LSD session might contain information about a person's attitude towards life in general, a trauma he experienced during childhood, how much self-esteem he has, how he feels about his parents, and how he feels about his marriage, all embodied in the overall metaphor of the scene. Such experiences are holographic in another way, that each small part of the scene can also contain an entire constellation of information. Thus, free association and other analytical techniques performed on the scene's minuscule details can call forth an additional flood of data about the individual involved. The composite nature of archetypal images can be molded by the holographic idea. Holography makes it possible to build up a sequence of exposures, such as pictures of every member of a large family on the same piece of film. When this is done, the developed piece of film will contain the image of an individual that represents not one member of the family, but all of them at the same time. These genuinely composite images represent an exquisite model of certain type of transpersonal experience, such as the archetypal image of the cosmic man, the woman, the mother, the father, the lover, the trickster, the fool, or the martyr. Professor Groff feels the evidence of a hidden holographic order surfaces virtually every time one experiences a non-ordinary state of consciousness. All right, multiple personalities. So now we're getting into MK Ultra, how the government's created sex slaves, assassins. This is all from this Nazi shit, man. Traumatize the mind, fracture it, and you can program it with whatever the fuck you want. Hologram provides a valuable model for understanding the sudden and transformative changes individuals can often experience during psychotherapy. He bases his conclusion on the fact that such changes take place no matter with what technique or psychoanalytical approach the therapist uses. Hence, he feels all psychoanalytical approaches are purely ceremonial and change is doing something else entirely. Ceremony, ritual. It's repetition. We do it to get into alpha state. We repeat things. Mantras, that's meditation. Repeating constantly is how you get into alpha state, which is how you subpass the ego and talk to the subconscious mind. Levinson believes that something is resonance. A therapist always knows when therapy is going well, he observes. There is a strong feeling that the pieces of an elusive pattern are all about to come together. The therapist is not saying anything new to the patient, but instead seems to be resonating with something the patient already unconsciously knows. It is though a huge three-dimensional spatial coded representation of the patient's experience develops in therapy, running through every aspect of his life, his history, and his participation with the therapist. At some point, there is a kind of overload and everything falls into place. Levinson believes these three-dimensional representations of experiences are holograms buried deep in the patient's psyche, and a resonance of feeling between the therapist and the patient causes them to emerge in a process similar to the way a laser of a certain frequency causes an image made with a laser of the same frequency to emerge from a multiple image hologram. Okay. So he feels that virtual permanence of some vortices or frequencies is often detrimental to our growth as human beings. A particularly powerful vortex can dominate our own behavior and inhabit our ability to assimilate new ideas and information. It can cause us to become repetitious, create the blockages in the creative flow of our consciousness, keep us from seeing the wholeness of ourselves, and make us feel disconnect from our species. Schoenberg believes that vortices may even explain things like nuclear arms race. Look at the nuclear arms vortex arising out of the greed of human beings who, isolated in their separate selves, do not feel a connection to other beings. They are also feeling a peculiar emptiness and become greedy for everything they can get to fill themselves. Hence, nuclear industries proliferate because they provide large amounts of money, and the greed is so extensive that such people do not care what might happen from their actions. When we allow the same vortices to take from repeatedly, he feels we are erecting a barrier between ourselves and the endless positive and novel interactions we could be having with this infinite source of all being. To catch a glimmer of what we are missing, he suggests we look at a child. Children have not yet had the time to form vortices, and this reflected in the open and flexible way they interact with the world. How does one get into heaven? With the mind of a child. And a child shall lead them. You need to revert. Not in your shitty ways, not in selfishness or any of the bad aspects, but you need to revert in the aspect of anything can be real. Whatever you imagine with your mind can exist. There is no such thing as boundaries. There is no such thing as limits. You have to wholly believe that. And you could go as far. I'm not talking about like fucking jump off a roof, I can fly. But if you could use your whole shit, I don't know. I don't think it's out of the question. Levitation, creating a certain frequency to kick back off whatever the Earth's frequency is, just opposing. I'd be flying. You can vibrate your body at a different frequency. Children have not a flexible way they interact with the world. According to Sparkling, aliveness of a child expresses the very essence of the enfolding nature of consciousness when it is unimpeded. If you want to become aware of your own frozen vortices of thought, Schoenberg recommends you pay close attention to the way you behave in conversation. When people with set beliefs converse with you, they try to justify their identities by espousing and defending their opinions. Their judgments seldom change as a result of any new information they encounter, and they show little interest in allowing any real conversational interaction to take place. Okay? When people with set beliefs converse with others, they try to justify their identities by espousing and defending their opinions. Number one rule of the magician, of the occultist, of a woke motherfucker. You are always a student first. My ideas are never set in stone. Right now, my ideas are the best that have been given to me. If something else, some other thing comes around with information that tops it, and I believe in it, I'll go back to being a Christian. I will go reading the Bible again if that's where it leads me back to. But so far, it's led me far away from it, in sense, most sense. But there are no truths, only half-truths. It's one of the 7 Kemetic laws, right? There are no truths, only half-truths. Every paradox may be reconciled. You can argue anything and make it right. It's all opinion of the person. That's why there's no point in argument. My teacher taught me one thing in this that's the most important. You can give this information out, that's fine, but don't force it. Don't ever argue about it, because they're not going to get it. Talking to them like, hey, I see what you're saying, but this is what I know, and if they know, motherfucker, you're wrong, and then I'll one more time, okay, but I really think that, look, like if they go, no, motherfucker, blah, 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 then I say, all right, you know what, you're right. I'll shut the fuck up. All right. No arguments. Okay, a person their judgments seldom change as a result of any new information they encounter, and they show little interest in allowing any real conversational interaction to take place. A person who is open to the flowing nature of consciousness is more willing to see the frozen condition of their relationships imposed by such vortices. That is bettering yourself. That is Macaulay. With the heads, those are the heads of your severed selves, the things that don't serve you anymore. These personalities, the shadow self, these are personalities your ego created to survive down here. That dickhead that doesn't trust anybody. The fucking guy that can't show his emotions. The guy that's got to get in a fight with anybody that's acting like an asshole in his life. Those are shadow selves. Those are not your true selves. Those are things you created to survive down here. Those are your frozen vortices. They don't serve you anymore, especially in this new age. We're in the age of love now. It's what the Mayans were talking about, and all those that said we were coming into the new age. It's a new frequency. We're done with the war. We're done with the hate. We're done with the separation. We're moving on to something better. So now is the time of Kalimon, where you let her take over and ask her to kill those things in you that don't serve you anymore. That's sacrifice. Sacrificing. Sacrifice yourself. Those are the selves you've created. Those severed heads that Kali holds. She's severing those parts of you that do not serve you anymore. Killing the demons, baby. They are committed to exploring conversational interactions rather than endlessly repeating a static litany of opinions. Human response and articulation of that response, feedback of reactions to that response, and the clarifying of the relationships between different responses are the way human beings participate in flow of the implicate order, letting it flow. We love each other. We accept each other. We try to understand each other and instead of trying to make each other believe what we believe. So multiple personality syndrome, in which two or more distinct personalities inhabit a single body. Victims of a disorder of multiples often have no awareness of their condition. They do not realize that control of their body is being passed back and forth between different personalities, and instead feel they're suffering some kind of amnesia, confusion, or blackout spells. Most multiples average between 8 to 13 personalities, although so-called super multiples may have more than 100 sub-personalities. Splintered. Their consciousness is splintered. By trauma, usually. One of the most telling statistics regarding multiples is that 97% of them have had a history of severe childhood trauma, often in the form of monstrous psychological, physical, and sexual abuse. This has led many researchers to conclude that becoming a multiple is the psyche's way of coping with extraordinary and soul-crushing pain. This is why every Disney child star goes fucking crazy. Because Hollywood is a pedophilic, they fuck little kids. I believe they're probably I know they're sacrificing these little kids. So, Britney Spears, the only one I've never seen from my lifetime is Hillary Duff that didn't go shit crazy. Amanda Bynes, and you watch these videos of them, they all have these different personalities, and they all have a common one. It's this little baby. It talks in a baby voice. Anna Nicole Smith had it, Lindsay Lohan, Amanda Bynes, and it came out later. Amanda Bynes, it's a group of a pedophile is a community, especially the higher up elite ones. It's a community. Amanda Bynes' father was a pedophile. He sexually molested her, and he sold her into Hollywood knowing that's what would happen to her. So that's why these people go crazy. They split. They get these different personalities. They don't even remember the shit that they do. And these personalities can be activated by certain phrases. That's why in the movies, the Russian assassin is on the phone and is talking, and somebody says Bumblebee, and suddenly he clicks into it, and he goes to kill his target. That's real. That fucking shit is real. Super real, man. Okay, so extraordinary soul-crushing pain. By dividing up into one or more personalities, the psyche is able to parcel out the pain in a way to have several personalities bear what would be too much for just one personality to withstand. In the sense, becoming a multiple may be the ultimate example that Bohm means by fragmentation. It is interesting to note that when psyches fragment itself, it does not become a collection of broken and jagged edges, shards, but a collection of smaller wholes, complete and self-sustaining with their own traits, motives, and desires. All these wholes are not identical copies of the original personality. They are related to dynamics of the original personality, and this in itself suggests that some kind of holographic process is involved. Bohm's assertion that fragmentation always eventually proves destructive is also apparent in the syndrome. Although becoming multiple allows a person to survive an otherwise unendurable childhood, it brings with it a host of unpleasant side effects. These may include depression, anxiety, panic attacks, phobias, heart and respiratory problems, unexplained nausea, migraine-like headaches, tendencies towards self-mutilation, and many other mental and physical disorders. Startlingly, but regular as clockwork, most multiples are diagnosed when they are between the ages of 28 and 35, a coincidence that suggests that some inner alarm system may be going off at that age, warning them that it is imperative they are diagnosed and thus obtain the help they need. 28 to 35. Okay, the Egyptians, ancient Egypt, you started your schooling and stuff. You weren't a young adult till you were 27. The ancients believed that 27 is when you started your education, because up until then you're still figuring out life. Your brain is growing. They knew this shit even back then. So this personality pops out around 27 to 36, and it was 27 or 28 to 36, and from 27 to 35, I believe, is when the Egyptians started your education, because they knew that was the vital part when you started becoming into your person. So obviously this personality popping out then for these people is obviously a warning sign that they need to clear themselves of that, or they could be fucked for life, because that's their most crucial stage. One of their most crucial stages. They're all crucial. 1 through 7, you're in alpha state. That's when you're sucking in everything that's shown to you. That's why they get us into school as early as possible now. The ancient, you definitely wouldn't have been in school by the time we go to school. You wouldn't have been kicked out of the house when you were 18. You were still considered growing and learning in most higher educated societies. Okay, so consciousness. No, okay, where's my... Okay, here we go. Starting the rails multiple. Okay, the ideas seem born out of by the fact that the multiples who reach their 40s before they are diagnosed frequently report having the sense that if they did not seek help soon, any chance of recovery would be lost. Despite the temporary advantages of the tortured psyche gains by fragmenting itself, it's clear that the mental and physical well-being and perhaps even survival still depends on a wholeness. Another unusual feature of MPD is that each of the multiples' personalities possesses different brainwave patterns. This is surprising, as Frank Putnam of the National Institute of Health psychiatrist, who has studied this phenomenon, points out. Normally, a person's brainwave pattern does not change even in states of extreme emotion. Brainwave patterns are not the only thing that varies from personality to personality. Blood flow patterns, muscle tone, heart rate, posture, even allergies can all change as multiples shift from one self to the next. Go watch that movie Split. Since brainwave patterns are not confined to any single neuron or group of neurons, but are a global property of the brain, this too suggests some kind of holographic process is at work. Just as a multiple image hologram can store the project dozens of whole scenes, perhaps the brain hologram can store and call forth similar multitude of whole personalities. In other words, perhaps what we call self is also a hologram. When the brain of multiple clicks from one holographic self to the next, these slide projector-like shuttings are reflected in global changes that take place in brainwave activity as well as the body in general. The physiological changes that occur as a multiple shifts from one personality to the next also have profound implications for the relationship between mind and health and will be discussed at greater. Okay.